Level up with the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member? Upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And you club members, I'll be doing the Zoom session on Sunday at about, we'll go 1 o'clock. So I'm going to get there early. Be 1 o'clock. We'll do the Zoom just to get you guys ready for this big game against the Detroit Lions. Can they pull it off? Well, we'll get to all that in a few minutes. I did want to get to a few things first, just some injury updates. And I'm sure you know by now that Jayden Daniels is not going on IR. I talked about that before, and that it was a good sign that you knew that everything was positive right now. I've heard he's doing really well as far as like how he feels and how it's like there's not a ton of soreness there for him at all. And I'd heard earlier in the week that there wouldn't be any surgery, but you have to let it play out because you don't know. Like, he was getting other opinions, so there's not going to be a surgery. Surgery for that situation is not always the most common outcome. There are some scenarios where it could have happened, and that would have been something that would have taken a lot longer to recover because there would have been other issues. So the fact that he's not on IR, the fact that that there's no surgery, there's nothing like that, there's no ligament damage, those are all really good signs. Now, will he come back? Well, that's going to be a story for when he's healthy, and we don't know yet. And I think and it depends on how long is that. Like what Dan Quinn said is they would reevaluate it after the bye week. So that's, of course, they have 2 more games before then. I do believe strongly that it would depend on where they are with the playoff chase. Like if they win one of the next 2, or you win one of the next 2, and you're 4-7, if maybe you win both, now you feel like you're back in it, and you should, and you're going to December with a shot. Then that's where I could see him coming back, depending on when he's healthy. I do not believe they will, for anybody worrying about rushing him back, that has not been their MO with Jayden or anybody else. And even in that game, like whether or not you wanted him in the game, he wasn't hurt. This is nothing like the Robert Griffin III situation at all. So many different layers to it. It is not the same, starting with the fact that, again, whether or not you believe he should have been in there, at 12 and a half minutes, that's when he started the drive. At 7.5, should he have been in there? That's a different story. But it wasn't like they left him in hurt and he subjected himself to worse. So I don't think they'll bring him back unless they really, really think like they have a shot. But we'll see how that all plays out down the road. And then for Sunday, again, obviously Terry McLaurin's out. Do not expect him to see him in Madrid either. And then questionable would be Tyler Owens, Eddie Goldman, and then Quan Martin. It does sound like we saw, I was watching Quan Martin out there in practice the last couple of days, including Friday, running sprints, doing some tackling drills in the sled. So, and they saw Tyler Owens going through some special teams work. So what that means for Sunday, we'll find out, but they were moving around pretty well. It wasn't like they were just sitting there on the sidelines. Will Harris has been out there doing a lot of stuff off to the side. So when he comes back, I don't know, but he is a guy who is determined to come back. So, and Dan Quinn said that before he even went in and had the surgery, he was already plotting out when he would return. And I think that's kind of the mindset he has. So anyways, those are the ones who are questionable. Obviously not Will Harris, but those are the ones who, the other 3 are questionable. So, all right. Oh, and I think that's it. Yeah. By the way, I already said the club member, so I don't have to do that. I'm kind of getting lost in thought here, but let's get to my 5 thoughts. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. Folks, this is the wallet I had before Ridge. If you ever seen the show Seinfeld, you know George Costanza's wallet. When this was full, it kind of gave Costanza a run for its money. Could have doubled as a phone book, wasn't good for my back at all. Now, here's my wallet. A sleek new wallet from Ridge. It's a slim, modern design that can hold up to 12 cards plus cash, made with premium materials, All Ridge products have a lifetime warranty. You want one with the Commander's logo? You can get it. But Ridge is more than just wallets. This is one of my favorite toys. It's a magnetic wireless charger that is terrific. They have key cases where the keys fold inside. No matter the product, Ridge offers free shipping and a 99-day risk-free trial. For limited time, our listeners get 10% off at Ridge by using the code Keim, K-E-I-M, at checkout. Head to ridge.com, use the code Keim, and you're all set. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Once again, 10% off at Ridge using the code Keim. Go to ridge.com, use the code Keim at checkout. You're all set. And then after that, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Support the show. Let them know that we sent you. My 5 thoughts. Let's start with number 1. Kurt Warner is a very smart guy. Of course he is. He played quarterback in the NFL. He's in the Hall of Fame. He has more quarterback knowledge in his whole body than I do in this little thumb right here. Oh, no, wait. Let me take that back. I am really off base here. He has more quarterback knowledge in this little thumb than I have in my entire body. Man, I'm sorry. It's been a long day, a long week, a long season, so I apologize. You get the point. I think he's a very, very smart guy. I always laugh when there are a lot of people on Twitter who try to tell him what he thinks is wrong or how he assesses a certain play is wrong because they knew this from, I don't know, studying something on whatever website, whatever. So anyways, I think he's very smart. You know that he did the breakdown of Jayden Daniels this week, and you know it wasn't a pretty breakdown. And he didn't say he was bad. He just said he wasn't doing things that he saw him do last year. He wasn't saying that he did kind of talk about I don't know if he used the headline, talk about sophomore slump. I'll get into all that in a minute. But again, like he broke down Drake May a few weeks ago and kind of had some similar issues in part because they have a similar style in terms of they both can move around. They're not going to just hang in the pocket and operate from the pocket. They can both hurt you with their legs. Daniels a little bit more, but May did that in college and he's done that here in the NFL. He can extend plays. So there's some things that are going to tweak Kurt Warner about both these guys. In part, there's a very different style from what he had as a quarterback. I'm bringing all that up because I'm going to talk about some of the things, not issues that I had with what he said, because, this is his opinion. Like I said, he knows a lot more about what quarterbacks should do, but I want to contextualize it in a minute because I do think there was some context missing from that breakdown. And he was strictly talking about, this is what I see. This is what that I think a quarterback should do. So he was very process oriented. And he even said there could be all these other things going on, but I want to get to all that in a minute. So the other thing with this quarterback class that you see is it's funny to see on social media, the fan bases with all these guys and who got the best one out of that class. I think there are some teams that got pretty good quarterbacks out of that class, including Washington. Nothing that's happened this year has changed my opinion of where I think Jayden Daniels can go. The only thing he's got to do is stay healthy. Now, right now, missing this time, okay, that's kind of a big thing. But, doesn't mean that next year will be the same way. We don't know. And I think there's some things he can do that can help himself that are partly what Kurt Warner was talking about. So, but I do think it's funny with the fan bases and Drake Mays now, he's the guy. Last year, Jayden Daniels was the guy. Maybe next year, someone else is the guy. The point is, this was a really, really good quarterback class. When these guys brought all those quarterbacks to Top Golf, I remember talking to people here, they thought that they were pretty high in all these quarterbacks. And I think it's playing out. They've all had some good games. Bo Nix sometimes he's hard to watch, and some games he looks pretty good. He's good with that system. Other times, hard to watch. Michael Penix has had his moments. We saw it, right? Other times, kind of down. Drake May and Jayden, I think, have emerged a little bit more. Caleb Williams certainly had his share. But the point is, they're all very capable, and at some point, someone's going to have a good game. Quarterback X is going to have a good game. Quarterback Y is going to have a good game. And it's they could all be pretty good and really kind of lay the foundation for the class. But I still think, I really like who Washington has at quarterback. And nothing that's happened here or anywhere has changed my thought. They got a really good guy. And I don't know, going back before that draft, because one of the things I did, I talked to more than a few coaches, guys who I respect, etc. And they were fairly unanimous. All but one said Jayden Daniels at that second spot. And one guy had told, I know one coach told Adam Peters that he was the best quarterback that he had scouted in the last 8 years. So point in saying that is nothing. I haven't seen anything that's changed where I think this can go for him. And there's work to be done for sure. And I think Kurt Warner pointed some of those things out. And I do think it comes back to one thing that Dan Quinn will probably address at some point with him is the scrambling. And one way you can protect yourself, like even on the play he got hurt, like that's probably should have handed it off and maybe you just throw it away. What he's trying to do is score. So that's the mindset he has. It's 38-7 and he's trying to make a play because that's what he does. He's a competitor. And that's one thing you have to really like about him. And so can you get to that point where you maintain that competitiveness, but you see times like, okay, trust this, go. Trust this, go. And I think that's what they want him to get to and cut down. One way you can protect is like, yeah, you build a wall around him, all that, but they have to protect himself because where he's gotten hurt, and 3 of the 4 times he's been hurt is on a scramble. So that's the area that he's going to have to work on as he gets going. And that's one of the things that Warner was talking about. And, is he holding the ball too long or whatever? But here comes my second thought. I do want to contextualize what his season has been like and just why, like the game Warner picked to go over was a Seattle game where you have no talent at the receiver almost, and you're facing a one of the top defenses in the NFL, and you didn't play the previous week. So it all adds up. And what I don't want to do is make excuses for him. What I don't want to do is sound like I'm just saying Jayden Daniels, they're wrong. Like I'm not saying that, but I am going to provide some level of context. So first of all, and I'm going to put a play up here from the Atlanta game for anybody watching it, or for if you're listening to it, I'm putting a play up here from the Atlanta game. Because one of the things did this morning is I'm curious to see, because I'll be honest, like some of the stuff that Warner was talking about, I saw last year. Like this is some of the stuff he did last year when he was a rookie. And so I'm putting up this play, and this is late in the season against Atlanta. They have a second and goal from the 8-yard line, and Chris Rodriguez running a little route over the middle, little circles out of the backfield, and he's open. Like it is there, and you need to hit it. And he could have, whether he gets 6-7 yards, maybe you break a touchdown and maybe you break a tackle, you win the game in overtime on that play. Jayden doesn't throw it. He keeps it, gets 6 yards, they still win the game. So that play gets lost in the shuffle because they win the game. He made other big plays. But the point is, like, I saw some of these plays last year. To me, a difference this year is you're not able to make other plays because there just isn't other talent around you. You don't have the playmakers around you to offset some of that with bigger plays. So maybe you're having to drive more. Maybe you have to get more plays because you're not getting the chunk plays. You're not getting the explosive plays. So other plays become magnified because like this offense isn't moving. So what is it? Oh, well, he's holding the ball too long. He's doing this. Well, the reality is he did do this last year. Now, I do not believe like this thought that he's a one-read guy and runs. That is not the case. I think if you watch him, you can see it's not the case. You can see him going through progressions. Could you say sometimes like get rid of the ball here? Sure. But he is going through his reads and doing it. And he does get to second and third reads. I saw that last year too. So that is not, to me, like people saying that, I don't know why they're saying that, because it doesn't seem like, you see things on film where it's like, that's clearly not his first read. I do think they were really good last year at creating good reads for him. And I'm going to get to that in a minute as well. So, and why I think that was the case. And I have some numbers for you that I think are pretty good, as Larry David would say, as far as like illustrating a picture of what's going on here. So, so that was the play against Atlanta. And, again, you want him to scramble less because that's how guys get, you can get hurt standing in the pocket. Andrew Luck lost his career because of getting hit in the pocket. So it's not just, you got to build protection, but, for him, the way that he can protect himself is by maybe getting rid of the ball a little bit more often, but then, and taking away some of the scrambles. And those were some of the things that Warner was illustrating. So the other thing I want to talk about too is, again, the lack of big plays. And when you don't have McLaurin, you don't have Noah Brown, you don't have De'Ami Brown, you're doing different things at times. You're not getting those big plays. So again, then the other things stand out. And the numbers are, it's not like he had bad numbers. And so I don't consider this a quote unquote sophomore slump. I think if you had your full allotment of talent, or at least some talent at receiver that could really hurt a team downfield, then you can say, okay, it just looks different. But it's really hard to measure overall. Like you can look at process, but in terms of effectiveness and results, it's hard to measure it because he hasn't had that, right? 2 games where you've had your top 3 receivers available, and that's a hard way to play. And not even just having them available, but then when they're gone, you don't have guys who offer any sort of threat down the field. And I know Jalen Lane has speed, but if you saw in the one of the examples Warner gave was a play where Jayden's looking at him and he wanted to go to him and he doesn't because like Lane can't get free against man coverage or against press coverage. Now, they like to attack that coverage and they like to attack it on the outside. Now, there was someone, I think Warner brought it up because there was a guy on the other side. I can't remember who it was, but in the slot has a defensive back is about 6, 7 yards off. So you got an easy 5 yards. That's the play he wanted to take. That's where I say, okay, but what are they being told to take? What are they being coached to take? And that's one thing I was talking to a quarterback. Is like, that's one of the things that he said was Marcus Mariota. He's like, just in general about that stuff, like, you don't know what a guy is being asked to do in those situations. And that's always the hard part sometimes with assessing that for anybody. That do you know what they're being asked or told to do in these situations? Now, what Warner might do is going to be different because he was a different quarterback, pocket passer. Shout out Mike Stewart, my club member, who brought that up in the private chat on Thursday night with the gold members. But he was right. Like Kurt Warner is a pocket passer. Drake May, Jayden Daniels, they're not necessarily pocket passers. They can both be very effective from there. And I think they could both survive there. And I think that's what he's trying to get him to. And like I said, I don't have any issue with that thought process. But I think the other thing is too, for Daniels, he's missed. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses. I'm just trying to provide context to this. But because again, you talk to these players and like, hey, listen, and again, I'm talking to Mariota, is like when you haven't played in a while and you come back in, the game moves so fast that sometimes you don't see the picture as clearly as you did before. So he had missed prior to this game 3 games in what, 6 weeks, something like that. And so you're not going to be at full efficiency, perhaps. Now, again, maybe that's an excuse. And if you think that is, you can, rip me a new one, whatever. But this is what, in talking to them, just like in general, like what does that lead to? And it could lead to, again, maybe you're not seeing it quite as well because it's just moving a little bit faster than where you're at with it. And so that's, something like, shoot, go watch like some of the Dallas games last year, first Philly game, like they did a good job against them. So it wasn't like this was like, oh my gosh, unearth something here, because it wasn't like every game last year was this, wow, scintillating highlight game, right? There were a couple games where it's like, he didn't play bad. It's just like, they just didn't look the same. And for whatever reason, but that's something else too. Like when you haven't practiced, like what does that look like? So, and maybe it's something that Warner saw in other games as well when he went over and looked at it and just used this one as an example. But that's one of the things. And then the last thing I'm going to get to one other thing too, but there's a couple of things. There was one time, the one play I kind of quibble with, and again, there were a couple of plays where you said like, I don't know. Like, again, then it's like, what is he being asked to do on that play? And we can see the guy off. And should he have gotten there right away? Perhaps. And there were some times where you say like, yeah, I think that's a play you could make. And maybe when you're in full rhythm, full confidence, full trust, you make it. And that's probably where Warner's saying, like, I saw him make this play last year. And a couple other times, like, that's where you need to, I would, for me, obviously, I would want to know. And I think for anybody want to know, what are you being coached to do in this situation on that play? The one play I really quit with, there's a 3rd and 15 where he kind of like said, you've got to throw it here to Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, 5 yards. It's 3rd and 15. That has kind of important context. Like it's hard to say like throw to a guy a tight end 5 yards away when he's probably going to get a few more. So if you're a quarterback, you want the first down. That's one way I say like that's a play that I don't think I would have included for that reason. It's like it's not a play where you can ding him for because it's 3rd and 15. It's a tight end. There's 3 guys, at the 15 at the first down marker. They're going to rally to the ball. and chances are he's going to get stopped after, maybe 5 more yards. So nobody there. So guys were open on that play, but it wasn't the situation where you're going to pick something up. And if you're trying to pick up a first down, you're not going to throw that ball. So anyways, then the other thing too, and this goes back to what these guys are doing because they are facing more, they're facing some different defense, right? A lot more single high coverage, a lot more. So that leads to, sometimes it could be man or it's more like maybe it's a match, zone match or whatever. So, but a more man-like situation. So last year, I'm going to give you an example, some numbers. So last year they faced single high coverages 389 times for the entire season. This year, they've already faced that 319 times. So teams have figured out a way that they want to attack them with their coverage schemes. Some of that goes back to, I think, the talent they don't have at receiver right now, that they're not threatening them down the field. I also think some of it, and that affects the run game. So here's another one. Last year, they ran the ball 53 times against single high coverage or single high looks. 53 times. They've already run it 134 times against single high coverage. Last year, 7.7 yards per carry of that look against that look. This year, 5.5. So it's just different. And I bring that up because when you're looking at what they did well last year, it's a lot they were facing. There was a lot of zone coverage. You're getting that quick game. You're getting the RPO game, the screen game as well. Like, haven't seen that quick game because when you're playing the single high, that's designed to take a lot of that away, that man, with more man coverage. We haven't seen a lot of the screen game. Like, you saw it a lot last year, the bubbles, the screens. And like, yes, those become easier throws, but those also get the ball out of somebody's hand quicker. And then it allows you to move the ball and you set up other plays off of that, like downfield plays. It's not like he relied on that, but it is something that was a part of this team's offense and because of how teams were playing them. But we haven't seen some of that this year for sure. Like Dallas, Pittsburgh, Philly, they played these guys man coverage and they certainly had some success. Now, not the second time for Philly, but the first time for sure. Third game, it was turnovers. But, like, so I'm just trying, like I said, I'm trying to provide context and I don't want to sound like I'm coming across as providing excuses, but I do think there was context to be had in that um, for sure. So, but anyways, I thought some of that was pretty interesting. I do think maybe they need to adjust more to when they're facing man coverage to help whoever's at quarterback. And I do, could you do some things like that? Could he have played better on some of those? Of course. I think he would be the first to admit that. But I don't look at this and say like, oh my gosh, I'm now worried about Jayden Daniels for the future. Maybe that's why I wanted to contextualize because I don't think it's a sign of like, oh no, what's going to happen here. I think it was just like there are some reasons. And as Kurt said, like it didn't matter to him who was out there at talent because the read is the read. The question is like what are you looking for and are you throwing with trust and anticipation? If you haven't worked as much with these guys, does that become an issue for you? Does it make it more difficult? Should it? If you're in your fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth year, would you handle it differently? You would hope so, but he's not, and so this is still part. As Dan Quinn has said earlier, like he's still growing, and part of that is the scramble stuff too. Like he is still a growing, developing quarterback, and I think this is part of the growth. Anyways, so I just wanted to address that, and hopefully you learned something out of that. But and again, I don't want to come across like, hey, I'm just waving pom poms for him. But I do like, first of all, I think he's still a very good quarterback, and I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for a long time. But I did think it was important to maybe provide a little bit of context to what has been going on here for him. And I would say this too, like the offense has not looked good since the start of training camp. I've said that before as well, and you can go back to who has been missing. I don't care the reasons, but when you don't have guys there, there is a result from that, right? And you don't have, and you can look at the roster and say like they had better receivers last year, which is funny because last year going into the year, it was like who's going to be the number 2 receiver? Well, they turned out to have pretty good depth because other guys, Zakiya steps up, Noah Brown stepped up until he got hurt, and then De'Ami Brown stepped up, right? This year beyond with Brown now is out, of course, and then Terry gets hurt for the first time and like this. And then it's Debo, and Debo is not your traditional type receiver. So he needs those other guys around to be more effective, and you just didn't have it on the roster. And they missed on KJ on what they thought KJ Osborne could do. Gallup didn't do anything, and they didn't have really anybody else to offset what they lost. And so they're in a spot because of all of that, not because of the quarterback just isn't playing well. Like that I don't think, and I don't know that that was Kurt Warner's whole point, but I'm just saying that on my own. So, anyways, number three, I'd like to see more 2 and 3 tight end sets starting Sunday against Detroit. Like, I think that's a way that this team is going to need to go because, again, you look at the receiver talent. Now you're down. If you look at the top 5 receivers going into the season, 3 of them are out Sunday. So obviously McCaffrey is on IR. So where is the strength of this team right now? It is not in the passing game. So why don't rely on it? Try something different. Like whether it works or not, the way to go to me is can you start to use more of those 2 and 3 tight end sets and use Krosky Merritt, use more Chris Rodriguez. You're going to hear from Rodriguez in a minute. And so because I think that's going to be a way you have to go because that's where the strength is. Like they have good blocking tight ends. Use them, right? You have a guy like you do have another tight end. This is where Ben Sinnott, for all the Ben Sinnott people who want to see him do more, if you can get into those 2 or 3 tight end sets and maybe run some play action off that, I think that suits him more than just like you can't give him Zach Ertz's routes. They are not the same. They're not the same route runners. They're not the same tight ends. That is not the answer. But there is where can you unleash some of what he can do? Is it in that play action game? We saw was it last week or the week before where you're chipping, he chips the defensive end, then he releases on a route, gets open, and now nobody's near him, but can you create some play action off of the run game? And I think that's something they need to do. And so, like, I was talking to a player, and he's like, I asked him about, I was like, well, what do we not have? And what they don't have, and he's like, and what do we have? What they have is a healthy run game personnel, right? Much healthier in that area. Lean into that. You have a quarterback in Marcus Mariota who can run the ball. Like they like using him on design runs. Lean into that. So, I think like that's the way. If whether or not they win the game Sunday, like to me, you're going to have to do a little bit more of that. And I know a big topic has been like get them under center. They're not going to go under center a lot. Like, listen, I told you last week, Seattle doesn't go under center a lot. They're just effective when they are. They're very effective with the play action. Like they're one of the least amount of teams in play action from under center in the NFL. But their success rate on it is really high in terms of yards per attempt. Can you get to that point? And what you have to do, though, if you're going to do that, if you want to do that, first of all, it changes their offense if they go a lot under center. Some backs like it, right? Some running backs, it gives them a better vision. These backs are comfortable in gun and pistol. But it also eliminates certain aspects, eliminates some zone read stuff. It eliminates, certain motions that you want to do. So it does alter what you do. And I think there are different styles of offense, and this is one that worked last year. Like it wasn't a problem last year. But I think if you're going to do it, like you can copy what Seattle does because they didn't do it a ton. They were just good with it. But if you do it, you got to run and you got to pass. It can't just be get under center, run the ball, get under center, run the ball. Because if you do that, well, it's not going to be effective. But if you do, like when Seattle was good at it because you didn't know what's going to happen and the linebackers would hold. So can you get Detroit's linebackers to do that or anybody's in the future? Because I think that's what you're going to have to do. They have the talent there. And again, I think like for Sinnott, that's where he is more effective getting open in some play action looks off of that. So anyway, just something to think about. And I think it could be, like I said, it could be where they're more effective. And shoot, if you remember in 2019 when Bill Callahan took over for Jay Gruden, that's what they did. They ran the ball. That's what they wanted to do. The games were sometimes 2.5 hours, which was great because they weren't very good and the games were over fast. That's a great combination. There was later in the year where Kevin O'Connell basically convinced him you got to stop running every first down because it's putting Dwayne Haskins in a bad spot on third down. And Callahan was thinking like I'm going to help the quarterback by taking the pressure off. O'Connell's thinking you're putting more pressure on him because it goes run, run, pass. It's a hard way to live if you're a quarterback. So I don't think you can just run the ball, but I think you have to lean into it more and use that style a little bit more. But I don't think the answer is more plays under center, more effective plays under center, and maybe more efficient if you're going to run 10 plays under center, if you can get 6 runs and 4 passes, you can get something out of that and add to what you do, and then get back to what else you want to do. But anyways, I do think it's interesting. Will Chris Rodriguez play more this weekend? He was named a captain, and he's a guy that has been productive when he's been in there. Number 4, I think at some point we're going to see some more young players, and one of them is Keim Medrano. I don't know when that will happen, but I think at some point this season, if it keeps going the way it is, it stands to reason that I think he'll get some more time. So I wanted to check in with him because when they drafted him, it was with the idea, can you be a coverage linebacker? Can you be like maybe the linebacker version of Jeremy Chin playing the big nickel role because your coverage skills, and like there was questions about, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? So could he do that? Well, we haven't seen him do that, and because the linebackers have been healthy, there's been no need. And I don't know, I don't know that he would be a full-time linebacker in the future. It could just be that, hey, he's a good cover guy, bring him in these situations and maybe get a bigger lineup, because one of the things they wanted to be is a bigger lineup against the run when they go to their nickel. That's a guy that you can do that with if he pans out down the road. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. All right, finally, number 5, and this is where we start talking about the game more. And so I apologize if you're clicking off now. I get it. Like, what do you mean? Anyways, I think it's going to be a lot tougher to beat Detroit this year than it was last year. Now, last year was unbelievable, right? It's hard to believe that it was the same year where this team went into Detroit and won, but they were playing with so much confidence, obviously healthy, but that was an unbelievable atmosphere in Detroit. I remember before the game, like, how are you going to beat this team here? Just the way the crowd was in, and just being in that city, there was just an expectation like, hey, this is Detroit's year. Now, who knows? But Detroit's still a very good team. The hard part is they're coming off a loss, and they didn't look good. And the other part is, Dan Campbell is going to talk to him about that game last year. I don't know how much revenge ever plays into him, but maybe you get them a little bit more focused, or maybe you get them, a couple guys a little bit more fired up. I don't know. It doesn't hurt, I'm sure. I'm sure he would do that. So with their offense, we know their offense is really good. Jared Goff is going to be a pocket passer. They did get to him last year a little bit and, caused some turnovers. Hard to do because he typically takes care of the ball, but he usually has one or two clunkers, a couple clunkers a year. Can you get him that? Well, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown is really good, and he can run all the routes, right? He can run, he's 3 levels, right? You can run the crossers, the deep overs, just underneath stuff, like everything, right? Very difficult. Jameson Williams, your deep guy, going to be tough. The guy that I think they probably are more worried about or should be more concerned about is Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a guy that I think Ben Johnson did a disservice not giving him the ball more in that playoff game, because I thought he was hurting them for sure. And I think he's going to be a guy to watch. I think that's the guy to watch for them, right? Because if he controls the ground game, it is a wrap. And the way he does it is, where are they weak? They're weak on the edges. Where is he good? Getting off the edge. So when you watch him, when he is kind of kept contained, the edges are getting upfield and just pushing it back inside. Like, I watched Minnesota do that. The difference is that Minnesota has gaps filled. This team too often has gaps that are not filled. So a guy cuts back and it's boom. Or they run Montgomery and he goes up the middle for 5-6 yards a pop. So you cannot let that happen, right? But it starts with controlling Gibbs. The edges are where he's going to want to be. So can you offset that? Now they can go to their big tackle alignment, right? With the 3 defensive tackles, and just have a bigger group in there to help on the edge. Because if he gets off, it's going to be very tough to stop them. And it's going to be even tougher to win this game. So that's what I'm looking at for there. Detroit's line is banged up a little bit. However, Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker sound like they were on pace, or it's early. You hearing from Dan Campbell, talked to our lines reporter, said they're on pace to play. It sounds like, so we'll see. But there are still a couple of injuries inside. Can you take advantage of that? Is it enough to take advantage of that? But again, it starts with that. Then you look at the outside of the corner. So now you got, what are you going to do? And one thing Quinn said is that both Jonathan Jones, we know Jones and Samerstill can both play inside or outside. Where I think that's going to depend on probably on matchups. So I am like you. I'm curious to see Samerstill, and I've said for a while, and I said this the other day on the midweek report that they've always viewed him as being best inside. Their actions suggest that. Like I can say, you can say whatever you want about it, but their actions suggest that. The problem is he's been up and down. So can he be better outside? Is he more consistent out there? Is he more of a playmaker out there? Yeah, I think there are sometimes you forget that. Look, there are definitely plays that went against him last year. They go against every corner, so it's going to happen. This is a good group to see where is he at, and so can he play an outside corner? Or will Jones be out there a little bit more? Noah Benagni can play inside. That's where he's best suited. So I think this is where it's good to see like what's going to happen with him and just what do you have there and where is he best suited. But the other part is too, like I still think he can be very good inside. I just think like last year it bounced around on both sides and it's hard to play inside. There's so much to learn. And how does that affect your growth and development? So does it mean that it's going to be always like that? No, because he can still get better. He's a smart kid. He works hard. He's a competitor all that stuff. By the way, I did make a mistake the other day when I said on the touchdown he allowed on the slot, he should not have had safety, whether or not he was expecting it, he was not going to have safety help. And I thought this after the game. He's like, and I saw even when I was talking about this, he just got beat off the line. The question was someone supposed to be back there as well? And the answer was no, that was his doing, just period. So I kind of not correct that, but well, maybe correct it a little bit because I did I'd heard that maybe he was expecting safety help, but I do think there's some other times where in that game there was some confusion with some of the coverages and what they're supposed to do. That's partly why Joe Witt will be on the field to help correct some of that stuff right away and get a feel for the game. But just wanted to correct that. Now on defense, Detroit's been is solid on defense. And I think this is going to be a challenge too. One thing they do well, a lot of man coverage, and they will play man coverage very well. Again, lean into the run game. Can you do that? They have some good linebackers, so it's going to be tough there. When the safeties, Kirby Joseph is out again. The guy to watch, obviously, when they do drop back is Aiden Hutchinson. And what can he do against Josh Connolly? Because he lines up at left end a lot of the time. So this is going to be a really good measuring stick for Connolly. Have you improved? If so, how much and where? So I think I've seen some improvement and growth in his game. Is it enough to then go out there and say you're going to be good against Hutchinson? We'll see. But there's been some growth and development there. There has been. Now, whether or not it's pronounced, again, time will tell. But I think there has been growth. And I think one thing you also have to do is chip him. You've got to chip him. But Hutchinson is really good for a guy who's coming off what the injury has a knee. Like he has really good balance around the edge. And so that's the thing that you have to worry about. Like that balance getting around the corner, he's going to be a problem. So you're going to have to offset that. And like I said, can you get to some screens? Can you do some other things that can help maybe reduce some of that pass pressure? But that's the one that you're going to have to watch. And so, folks, we'll see. This is going to be a tough one. It's been a brutal stretch, and I feel for you because this is not enjoyable at all for anybody because nobody wants to go to games where it keeps getting blowouts after blowout after blowout. And can they hang around the fourth quarter? Can they do something where it's like now maybe you have a chance in the end? I don't know. There's this, you draw up the formula. Can they run the ball? Can they stop Gibbs? They haven't stopped anybody in a while. And that's, to me, the big concern. And they don't have guys who can threaten an offense. So it's going to be very tough. And, see what happens. You know it. Talk to you next time.